Assalamu alaikum. I welcome you all to another episode of Policy Hub by Berkeley Institute of Public Policy. As you know that seismic shifts in the climate continue to ravage economies around the world. This impact is further augmented in the global south or the developing countries, which lack both the capital and the resources to mitigate the adverse effects of disasters fueled by climate change. The agriculture sector in countries like Pakistan continue to be hit by this phenomenon, which in turn drives food insecurity. However, tragedy and crisis often provide mankind with the opportunity to innovate or to increase its resilience in the face of adversity. One such concept is called climate smart agriculture, and we've got just the expert to help us understand it. We have got with us Mr. Shahid Najam, who is the Vice Chairperson of Berkeley Institute of Public Policy, and he's got over 39 years of experience with the government of Pakistan and the UN system. Thank you, Shahid, for joining us today. So before we can understand the concept of climate smart agriculture, so could you help us explain what are some of the challenges that the agriculture sector in Pakistan faces currently?
Thank you very much for inviting me, Firas, to this very important public policy hub session. But before I proceed to dwell upon the challenges which the agriculture sector faces in Pakistan, I think we need to understand the importance of agriculture sector for Pakistan. It contributes about 19.2% to the GDP. It employs roughly about 38 to 40% of the labor force. And as you know, that roughly 65 to 70% of the people in the rural areas, which are currently resident, they depend directly or indirectly on agriculture. So it's a very, very important sector for Pakistan. But unfortunately, if you look at historically, agriculture sector has not been paid due heed by the government. For example, if you look at the GDP or the rate of agriculture growth, it used to be more than 5% in 80s. Then it was reduced to 3.2% in close to 2000. And then finally in 2016, this was the first time that agriculture in the entire subcontinent faced a negative growth of 0.2%. So you can imagine a sector which used to be the engine of growth because of the assiduous neglect by the government, by the successive governments, but was reduced to even contributing minus 0.2%. Though it has, I believe, during 2022, 2023, the statistics say that it has resurged and now contributing about 4.4%. But even then, it's a very sad and sordid commentary the way agriculture sector has been dealt with in this country. As regards specifically the challenges, in my view, the first and the foremost challenge which we have been facing all along is the policy and institutional fragmentation. If you look at the policy landscape, agriculture policy or the related policies, there is no coherence. There is no connect or link. Indeed, at times, the policy landscape tends to negate the agriculture sector. Look at the institutional fragmentation. We have an irrigation department. We have a food department. We have an environment department. We have a livestock department. We have a forest department. All these departments are directly related to agriculture. I'm not in a way denying the significance of placing focus, but there is no linkage, there is no coordination. Again, look at the water policy that we have recently promulgated. To what extent it is agriculture sensitive? Look at the environment strategies that we are developing. To what extent they have incorporated agriculture. So this is the kind of a policy and institutional fragmentation which we have. Look at the productivity. I mean, it's a very, very bad comment on us as an agriculture country, that compared to the world, if you look at the average yield, 70% less is when compared to the world on wheat, 82% when it comes to cotton, 61% lower yield when it comes to rice. Now you can imagine, I mean, these are the major crops. Sugarcane is 60%. So look at the potential that we have, but we have not been able to increase or maximize the yields, with the result that the contribution of the agriculture sector to the economic growth is not being fully harnessed. That essentially means that there is no investment in the R&D. Look at the land holding. 43% people, more than 43% farmers own less than 1 hectare. Look at the resource allocation that we have. I mean, if you look at the terms of trade, it's all along against the agriculture sector. So there is, within the resource allocation in the agriculture, while the policy says that we have to diversify and promote the high value crops, the total allocation to the high value crops is 11%. We talk about the technology, we talk about the market, we talk about access to finance, we talk about productivity. On all these 4 accounts, agriculture has been a loser in this country. So, I mean, in my view, I mean, there are other challenges also. If you look at the backward and forward linkages, look at the agriculture production practices, look at the water use efficiency, look at the seed, look at the technology, look at the credit. In all these backward linkages, agriculture somehow does not figure prominently. Look at the agricultural farmer practices, which are very hackneyed and old practices that we have. And similarly, if you look at the forward linkages, there is a post-harvest losses we have no storage, no marketing linkage, domestic or international market linkage. The farmer goes by the signs and the impressions which he receives from across the market, although he should make his decision based on the demand in the market. But we do not have a robust market information system which penetrates and which reaches or which enables the farmer to take the informed decision. So in my view, these are some of the challenges which the agriculture sector faces in Pakistan.
So the audience would like to know what exactly is climate smart agriculture now, and how is it different from conventional agriculture?
Again, I think it's very important that we understand the concept of climate smart agriculture in totality, comprehensively. But imagine Pakistan is already on the global risk climate index 8th worst affected country in the world. As for the agriculture, it is estimated that if there is an increase from 0.5 to 2 degrees centigrade, agriculture productivity would lose by 8 to 10%. In Pakistan, in the last 3 decades, we have already witnessed a temperature increase of 0.5%. And if the trend continues, it is anticipated again by the experts that the losses could be 1 trillion rupees, including about 470 billion rupees for the livestock sector. So this is the kind of enormity of the challenge that we are facing because of the climate. And that is why we have to move towards the climate smart agriculture. Now, if you look at the conventional agriculture recently, the Green Revolution was considered to be the nirvana for agriculture sector. Well, what was it? It was the increase in the productivity now no doubt was achieved. Use of fertilizers, use of pesticides, use of technology, mechanization. This was the kind of conventional agriculture which was practiced, but the unintended or unanticipated consequences were not factored in. Like the pest resistance has gone, like biodiversity is an enormous challenge, like soil and water pollution is one of the major challenges which the humanity is facing. So this is all the conventional agriculture. Whereas the climate smart agriculture specifically focuses on climate, and this is a distinctive feature, that climate smart agriculture is responsive to the changes in the climate. It addresses the issue of resilience. It addresses the issues of mitigating the GHG emissions, which again is something very important for especially for the marginalized farmers. Like if there is drought or there are floods, so you have to build the resilience of the smart farmer to be able to cope. So they have to adapt to the changes in the precipitation, changes in the rainfall, or the phenomena of drought. At the same time, their vulnerability has to be mitigated. So this is what climate smart agriculture is. And a very important element of climate smart agriculture, which I think ought to be paid heed to, is the synergies and trade-offs which it presents. And that is synergies and trade-off between productivity, adaptation, and mitigation, which is the reducing the GHG emissions in the. So there are trade-offs. If you go for the technology or practices or strategy which increases productivity, what would be the cost in terms of the environment? We have to. If you go for the adaptation, what will be the impact on the productivity? If you have to opt for the mitigation strategies, again, what would be the impact on the productivity? But we do not want to reduce the productivity to the extent that there is a food shortage. So it is a synergies and trades-off. It's a very, very conscious effort that has to be made at all levels. And it's not only technological interventions. It is the agriculture activity in its entirety which had to be taken into consideration when we are talking about the climate smart agriculture. And I think I would try to encapsulate in a very short phrase that it is climate smart agriculture is an integrated approach which enhances the productivity and competitiveness of agriculture without, it's very important, without challenging or disturbing the environmental integrity. It reduces the GHG emissions and it increases the resilience of the farmer to be able to cope up with the change of the climate. So this is something which is very distinctive and unique about the climate smart agriculture.
So now moving towards a very important question. So how would you connect climate smart agriculture holistically to the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals?
Well, if you look at the philosophy of SDGs, the quintessence of SDGs is one, inclusivity, resilience, and sustainability. So these are the three basic elements which the SDGs emphasize on. And exactly, if you look at climate smart agriculture, it also focuses on inclusivity, sustainability, and resilience. So there is a conformity, a congruence between CSA and SDGs if you look at a broader conceptual scale. SDG is about the sustainable human development. CSA is about the sustainable human development also. So that way, there is so much of affinity between the SDGs and CSA, and there is a direct connect. Now, if you specifically talk about the SDGs, about the 17 goals, if you look at the CSA, climate smart agriculture, it endeavors to, number one, alleviate poverty. Why? Because if it increases the resilience, or it mitigates the vulnerability of the small farmers who are the most vulnerable and whose assets are more vulnerable. So they will be able to absorb the shock of the climate change, which means that they will be able to sustain their livelihood assets. So it's poverty alleviation. No hunger. Again, climate smart agriculture focuses on food security and hunger. There are 66% people who are considered to be malnutrition now in Pakistan. About 35%, I believe, or 33% are stunted children that we have in this country, or stunted growth. So it is extremely, extremely important that we embark on an agriculture policy which looks at the food security element. So zero hunger, poverty alleviation, number one SDG. SDG 2 is the zero hunger. Then if you look at SDG 6, which is clean water, if I correctly recall, and what climate smart agriculture essentially moves away from the use of chemical fertilizers and chemical pesticides. So it's also the sustainable use of the water. Then if you look at the SDG 10, it is reducing the inequality. Again, climate smart agriculture with special focus on small farmer, trying to building their resilience or reducing their vulnerability, tends to ensure distributive justice, resource distributed, a better farmer-centered resource allocation. So it directly contributes to the achievement of the SDG 10. Then we talk about the SDG, about the consumption and production patterns. Right? I think it's SDG 12. Look at the production system that we are introducing with the climate smart agriculture. That it will respect the boundaries of the planet Earth. It talks about environment. The major focus is on sustainable utilization of the resources. So there is a direct nexus between the SDG 12 and climate smart agriculture. And then if you talk about the climate action SDG 13, CSA, the ingredient of climate smart agriculture is that it's direct linkage of agriculture with the climate change. So you can imagine, and I can elaborate on specifics, but I think we have to be very crisp and succinct in this short episode that we are going to have. And then finally, if you talk about the SDG 15, it's the life on land. So if you look at climate smart agriculture, it, number one, sustains the soil fertility, respects the soil. It ensures the efficient use of water. It reduces or discourages the use of chemical fertilizer and pesticides. So if you look at the practices which it espouses, the use of biofertilizer, reducing the GHG emissions. So this was all ensuring sustainability of the life of the human beings on the planet. So there is that kind of a direct connect, and I believe there is very, very strong connect between the SDGs and the climate smart agriculture.
So, exactly is the current status of climate smart agriculture in Pakistan? Is it being practiced here? If not, what are some of the impediments in its adoption in Pakistan?
Well, I'll be very frank. I think it's more of a rhetoric and political statement than that of a committed action to promote agriculture sector or to adopt climate smart agriculture. If you look at historically what Pakistan has been doing in terms of responding to the severity and rapidity of climate change, that we passed the Climate Change Act, I think, in 2017. We enacted a climate change policy in 2012. We are regularly subscribing and participating in the summits and the meetings and the sessions all along on climate change, where we make commitments and where we announce that we are committed to contributing to the humanity's effort to counter the climate change. But in reality, there is nothing that we have done, or there is very little that we have done. And there is always, whenever a new government comes, there is a realization, there is a commitment. But in my view, the very important thing where we are lacking is that we have not been able to integrate the mitigating aspect of climate change in our climate action strategy. And the argument is that Pakistan contributes only 0.8% in the GHG emissions. This is a very, very fragile and filial argument. It's a collective responsibility, though a differential responsibility that all of us have. But what happens after 10 years? With the growth, Pakistan's contribution to the GHG emissions will increase. And therefore, I think we need to be cognizant of the mitigation impact, which the government, unfortunately, we have many meetings at the technical level, even at the political highest level. But there's a little realization of mitigation. Secondly, if you look at the portfolio, you will find in the resource allocation, in the public sector development programs, that there is a specific allocation for the climate smart agriculture. But when it comes to practice, the resources are not there. The resources are not there. So, in my view, I think there has to be a realization and a commitment at both administrative and political commitment at the highest level to espouse climate smart agriculture. Recently, the Shahid Javed Burke Institute of Public Policy, with the funding from the ADPC and World Bank, carried out 3 or 4 specific framework studies. One of them was on the climate smart agriculture. Now, this study was submitted, a report on the climate smart agriculture, very clearly spelling out the challenges, very clearly spelling out the problems that we are facing, and very clearly articulating the need and the urgency and the immediacy to adopt climate smart agriculture. We have done a report, and we have, for wheat and cotton and for livestock sector, given even the action plans, how to adapt to be able to cope with the vagaries of the climate change and enable the farmer to build their resilience, and how to reduce the GHG emissions by adopting technologies and practices. We have also advocated that there are two policy instruments which are very detrimental to agriculture. One is the subsidy. And what subsidy we are giving? Subsidy we are giving to the volumes of the crops like wheat, sugarcane, rice. We are giving subsidies. While we are advocating that we need to gradually withdraw from subsidy, if you espouse the climate smart agriculture, there will be no need of giving or dishing out millions and millions of rupees, billions of rupees every year to subsidize agriculture sector. Water policy. The way we are using water in this country through flood irrigation. What happened is that the sugarcane seems to have replaced the cotton. Why? Because there is no pricing of water. We are not respecting the agroecological zones that are there, the suitability of the crop, the cropping patterns that we have. So both subsidy and water, I think we need to, and there has to be a huge political will to be able to, one, deal with the subsidy issue and deal with the water pricing issues. So the frameworks are there. Climate smart agriculture framework, national cotton policy framework is there, national wheat policy framework is there. We have even submitted or prepared a draft green smart plan for Punjab, which is the granary of the entire country. So, in a nutshell, in summary, while the statements are made, studies are conducted, evidence is collected, there is a little appetite in this country, unfortunately, to embark on the implementation framework. So I don't know what is going to happen, but again, as I earlier stated, if there is a decrease in the productivity because of the climate change, it will have very, very serious implications, both in terms of the economic growth of this country, because agriculture sector is one of the major contributors to GDP. It will impact the farmers. It will result in unemployment. It will result in food insecurity. And unfortunately, with the kind of challenges that we are facing now, if we do not act and act now, it will be too late for us to retrieve the situation.
So thank you so much for taking our time for today's episode once again. So I'm sure policy students, especially, and thought leaders of the future must have benefited from the discussion. That is all for today. Until next time.
Thank you.
Allah Hafiz.
Thank you very much.